So, welcome everyone to the Karachi Biennale Trust. Right now, we are sitting in a seminar room of NED University, and we have created a very comfortable, cozy space, which is like the long table, which we can acknowledge Lois Weaver for, who has done these numerous long table discussions ranging from on many topics. So we've tried to replicate that over here so that we can have a very informal kind of talk about some very interesting topics. So as you can see on the screen, the KB24 is right now in progress, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask the curator, Wahida Baloch, to say a few words about this particular theme that that is being organized in the NED University, which is called Riverine Resilience. So Wahida, please can you take 5 minutes and just talk about the theme?
Yeah. So hello everyone and good evening. Can you hear me? Okay. So as we all know that the banks of the rivers have been an essential place for development of all the civilizations. So as we have Indus Valley civilization, which have developed on the right bank of the river Indus. And river Indus is the biggest river, the largest river in Pakistan, which starts from north and which ends at Karachi, and it flows into the beach, this sea, Arabian Sea. So, and that's why it is the ending point of the river Indus, and it is very important discussion we have to just come across, because the river Indus is actually not flowing that frequently to the delta, and Karachi has been the victim of this main phenomena which is happening in Pakistan. So it is important that we are sitting in Karachi talking about river Indus, and it is very important for me as well because I also live on the right bank of the river Indus in Jamshoro. So I have been really thinking about the river Indus itself, but it's not about this particular venue of the Karachi Biennale is called Riverine Resilience, because we are talking about risk, and we are talking about the foodscape, we are talking about the life and livelihood, abundance. So all the things come through river, because water is the basic thing that is important for life. So there are artists who have been really working closely with the river biographies. So I would like to introduce two artists, Lundal and Seatal. Both of them have been really doing river biographies around the world, and I have invited them to work on Indus River, and we have just initiated a project on river Indus, and their project really calls for the Indus River's own history, because we never talk about river as a body or the river life as a history, or we never go into those kind of histories. So, and Kader Jatial, who is sitting near me, is also an artist. He has also worked on the river Indus, and he has been really talking about the livelihoods of the people, livelihood of those people who have been living in the river Indus in their boats. Their life was related with the boats. So what is happening with these people who were really dependent on the river, and their life was dependent on the rivers. Similarly, we are not only talking about the river Indus, we are also talking about other rivers which have been dying and which are supposed to be called as dyed rivers. So one of those rivers used to flow in Punjab, which is called Punjab, the land of five rivers. So Sadikan has been working on River Ravi, and he is from Faisalabad. So he comes from the textile, and he comes from the city where there is textile industry, and how this textile industry have been contaminating the river bed, the Ravi river bed, and how it comes to our food, and how the whole agriculture have been really spoiled by these dyes, and how this sewerage system of the city has been really a source for the river which flows into the river, and river has been contaminated. So I think we have been talking about the life of the river and the lives related to the rivers. So I would like to just ask Nusrat to take the mic.
Thank you, Atika and Wahida. I would like to start with Raphael, if I may. And before that, I would just like to say that in a preliminary meeting, Atika and I were discussing how living in a city with crushing urbanization, concrete, how there is this phenomenon of water blindness, how much we need the water to flow, and how little the awareness is of where those water bodies which are shriveling up should actually be flowing. And I think this theme, Wahida, riverine resilience, it will go a long way towards raising consciousness for that. So, Raphael, may I invite you to introduce the Guarani project and share what you're doing with the community there?
Hello, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Karachi Biennale and Richmond Arts team, and all the artists and everyone that are here today to talk. I'm really pleased to participate on this project, and I'm sharing a little bit of the work I'm doing with the Guarani community in São Paulo for 4 years now. I'm a Brazilian photographer. I'm working mostly with National Geographic Society in the past 4 years. And I think this kind of connection, this kind of interchange of knowledgement and perceptions around the riverbanks, around the cityscapes is really an inspiring opportunity for us to connect what we're doing here with what you guys are doing around the world. So I will, first of all, and as an introduction, I think for many indigenous people, such as the Guaranis, rivers are the veins of Mother Earth, and they are nature's way of keeping water alive. But in many places, such as in São Paulo, where I live, where the Guarani community is located, only the scars remain. Due to droughts and poisoned veins, floods, or inundations resulting from neglected of the riverbeds, they are turning the rivers in a symbol of death. And I think this symbol can and must be transformed. So I will present a little bit of my work. I'm just sharing my screen. 1 second. Okay, can you see it? Yes. So for this, I will share a little bit of my ongoing project, which is called Forest Ruins. Forest Ruins is a project that tells the story of the Guarani Mbiá indigenous community who lives in what is now known as the city of São Paulo. They are indigenous population of about 1,000 people, surrounded by the urban sprawl of a megalopolis of 22 million inhabitants, the largest city in the Americas. As the Guarani beautifully say, they are not urban indigenous because they were here long before the city even existed. They are surrounded by highways, and they live in the smallest indigenous land in Brazil. In the right side, you can see one of the highways that are cutting their path. It's called Anhanguera Highway. Anhanguera is a Guarani name, and it means the devil's path because that was the route the colonizers would use to hunt down indigenous people to become slaves. The Guaranis actually was one of the first indigenous peoples to be enslaved by the Europeans when they invaded America and Brazil, and they remained the largest number of enslaved people on São Paulo's plantations until mid 1800s. When there's fire in Jaraguá, the Guaranis are usually the ones fighting the fire. Most of the time, they are abandoned by governments. The real estate speculation has never stopped advancing on their territories. And nowadays, several projects threaten their way of life, such as the construction of a dozen buildings or a legislative bill that wants to stop recognizing their right to the land. This is one of the rivers that cross the Guarani territory. It's a small flow, a small river, but it's visible that the signs of the urban structure interfere in their lives. As in this photo in Piauí village, for example, this child is swimming in a river that his parents and his grandparents swam in, but is now being piped. This is also the case when we look at the Tietê River, the biggest river in São Paulo, one of the most polluted river in Brazil. It's more than 1,000 kilometers and 100 meters of river that crosses many cities, more than 6 cities in Brazil. And last year when we were in the banks of the Tietê River with the Guaranis doing laser projection to gather attention on the river and the invisibility of the river. I was really I was really touched by the phrase that the Guaranis wanted to project in the river, which was Tietê Vivo. It's the same as translates to Tietê is alive. So I think this is really wonderful in terms that even if we're talking about one of the most polluted rivers in the world, that is considered by mostly of the people living in this megalopolis as only a sewer, the Guaranis still see life in this river. And Tietê actually is a Guarani name too, Tupi Guarani name, and it means mother. It's the mother of them all. So they are struggling to save this mother from the consequences of the cityscape urban development model and the colonizing process that started 500 years ago. In fact, the history of the Guaranis for me, it's much more about it's not about their pains or their sorrows. It's much more about their power and their resilience. So this is Manuela Vidal. She's a 6 years old children in this picture. And even after 524 years of European invasion, Manuela still learns to speak Guarani language before she learns the Portuguese language. We're talking about a village of 1,000 Guaranis living in the midst of this huge city, and they're still learning their language. And as Manuela, all the Guarani child do the same. They're they have managed to maintain their language, but also their religion, their faith, the nature that surrounds them, and many aspects of the Guarani traditional way of life. In these photos, for example, you can see the Guarani New Year celebration called Arapiaú that happens in August. Guarani education also plays an important role in preserving their culture and relationship with the land. And like many international schools, they also have bilingual and bicultural education. They will learn the Guarani language and culture in school, but they will also learn the Juruá culture, as they call the whites in Brazil. And of course, much of their knowledge is still transmitted through the generations, passed down from those who came before them, such as Emília de Achucá, picture in the right, with her husband and her dogs. She's one of the inhabitants of the Guarani village in Jaraguá, and she was 108 years old when I took this picture a few years ago. She's even older now, and she tells us that the secret for her longevity is mainly due to one thing: only eating the Guarani traditional foods, like these beautiful, colorful corn plants preserved by their ancestral agriculture system. So they are still planting, they are still preserving their crops and their traditional food. And people in the West, at least in Brazil or the United States, they still think that corn must be yellow. And the Guarani show us that corn can be in many, many different colors. And this is a sign of their power to maintain to their roots. And of course, this doesn't stop the younger Guarani families from shopping the supermarkets, which is becoming more and more necessary with the growing population and the pressure of the urban way of life. So they can be found anywhere in the cityscape. And the Guaranis are occupying more and more spaces. Actually, you can see them at protests, at rallies, events, or just walking around. This is Rafa Kage. He's one of the characters I'm following up in this story. He's an amazing TikToker. He has huge social networks. He's telling everyone how is for him to be living in a cityscape, being indigenous and LGBT character, a person. So this time we're in the São Paulo's one of the most important avenues in São Paulo, called Avenida Paulista, and people would usually shoot bad things at him when he's here. People would shoot bad names to him, and one person passed with his car and said, "Go back to the forest." Once, and this time we're taking this picture. And I think that people from São Paulo and from many urban cityscape, urban centers, in São Paulo specifically, they don't know that São Paulo was a forest in the past, and it's actually it is still a forest. So the Guaranis are living the last remains of Atlantic forest, rainforest in the city. It's the Jaraguá Peak. They have 400 hectares of protected forest they are living in. Even if they only have 1 hectare legalized by the justice by this moment. They have 8 villages around it, and for me, and with this dialogue with the Guaranis for these years, and I think it will be amazing to have them speaking directly to you all in the wisdom conversation we're gonna have in Brazil. We're planning to do it from the village, so we're gonna live stream from inside the village, the praying house, and I think they will tell their perspective better than me. But considering that cities currently consume about 75% of global energy and emit around 60% of greenhouse gases, this is the decisive moment to question the urban structure. The climate emergency is forcing us to reshape our imaginary of collective life and to even rethink cities and the possibility of cities as they are. And the Guaranis are showing us there are other ways to relate with the earth, even if they are living in the same territory and the same time as the city of São Paulo. And to finish, I will play a quick video on the latest work we're doing together. We're experimenting with their traditional pipe, the petenguá, and their sacred smoke, the tatachiná. And we are trying to build, to envision their cosmology, the traditional Guarani cosmology, which is really totally based on their sacred smoke, the tatachiná. And we're doing this work together, and this is just to present to you all where we are in this research, in this collective work. I will play a quick video. I think I forgot, just 1 second. I need to share again. So you have the audio. Okay, we're gonna have the audio now. So this is an ongoing work we're doing together right now, and I think it's one of the layers of this project that I would like to explore and open up with this collective project with Karachi and uh, in in Richmond Arts and this project with the British Council. So I was eager to show a little bit of this, and I can explain a little better later as my time is going out. So I think this is the way maybe I would think about interacting and creating some perspectives for the river and the water discussion in the cityscape, their smoke and the flow the smoke can create. So I'm just really happy to share, and thank you.
Thank you, Rafael, for acquainting us with that amazingly resilient community. 1,000 people right in the middle of such a big city. It's something else. And I think it's particularly interesting how they embrace the diversity of corn. It's so different from modern homogeneous agriculture. It says a lot about their values. I would like to move to one of our artists who is showing in this venue as part of Riverine Resilience. And Satren, may I come to you now? Satren has been doing a lot of work with contamination of river bodies. He's from the Punjab, and Punjab means 5 rivers. It's a confluence of 5 rivers, but it's not going to remain 5 rivers any longer, I think, because we're losing rivers. So, Sadkan, can you step in? No. Why don't you take this and pass that to
Hello. So I live and work in Lahore from I think it's 12 years in Lahore. So basically I'm from Faisalabad and I born and my parent house in Faisalabad. So I just go to Faisalabad every week. So I have to cross the river Ravi. So every day. So I just start capturing and photographing Ravi usually on a daily basis. So basically, I'm more interested how the open canal sewerage system we have in third world country, and especially in Lahore, in the bigger city. So how that open sewerage system and the people living around that nalas, we call that open sewerage system is nalas, the people living on it. And I just start photographing and the particular people, the community who work in with that nalas. So this is the starting point of my project. And after when I just start documenting, I just came across, I just see a lot of colorful water in different nalas. So it's look very pretty and aesthetically pleasing, but then I realized where the color is coming from. So I just realized there is a lot of dyeing mill we have in Faisalabad. So Faisalabad have 350 textile mill, or over 80% mill don't recycle their water. So they just dump in different nalas. So I just more interested how that colorful dyes and which looking so pleasing, how different dyes polluted our waterbed, especially the water. So I just start experimenting with the mixture of different dyes and just putting in a water. I just trying to just slow down the process of how I can see and can visualize the process. I just take these different. If you see in an image, there is a different container, different size of container. The size of container is vary because I just documenting different industries and we have a different size of channels in which water is flowing in the industry. I just take the sizes, because I'm more interested in the process of the how dyes go into water and part and become the permanent part of the water. I just use this transparent glass to just visualize that. So in the front, I just there is slabs. This is I believe I'm working with the plaster. Plaster is a part of our earth. So I just start experimenting how that pigment go into earth, because in open sewerage, a lot of dyes go into our waterbed, are permanently part of our uh, waterbed. So I just make a slabs and just put in that dyeing water, and that plaster starts soaking the water. So different colors and the different pigment start traveling in that slab. So every color has on tendency to move or just incorporate with the the slab. So this is, I'm really interested how water and the earth is contaminated, particularly industrial waste. So after a lot of discussion and documenting the canal system, I just realized all that polluted water go into a Ravi at Bulle Shah Mode. We 4.8 billion ton water waste go on a daily basis in a Ravi. So, because India built a lot of dam on a Ravi, so we don't have a good amount of water in Ravi. So the Ravi is a very dying river. Or this is a particular about the Faisalabad, but Lahore also dump a lot of waste in a Ravi. So Ravi is not, we can't say it is a river. I think it's become a Ganda Nala right now. So this,
a contaminated canal.
yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Sadhka. And it's really scary actually to see how well your artwork conveys the toxicity that's actually happening and the water that's going into wells and going into our crops and into our bodies. It's really frightening. I think we're going to see a lot of examples of what's called the tragedy of the commons, where a public resource is used for selfish reasons and it's lost its value to the wider community, is then slowly lost over time, and we lose that resource. I'd like to move to London now and to Elin, who is an artist, and she's been doing very interesting work on eels in the Thames River. Elin, would you like to come and introduce your project to us?
Yeah, hello. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. It's a real honor to be at this event today. I just want to double, if I can check the sharing systems on Zoom. I still can't optimize for video. So if it's possible to disable other people's capacity to share their screen, and then I can maybe click optimize to for video, and then you'll get a better experience of the video clip I'm going to show. I don't know if that's possible. If not, we'll just have to see how it goes.
I think not on our side, Elin. I think for Karachi,
Okay,
technically not possible
cool.
at the moment.
Okay, no worries, no worries. All right then. Just give me a sec. Okay then, so I am an artist and a filmmaker, and I'm based in Sheffield, which is in the north of England. And previously I was based in London for over 20 years. So I've made work in relation to both of these places. My practice is very collaborative. I use processes of collective research and co-learning to devise new mythologies, and often developing these ideas in workshop settings. So where conversations, the body, sound, and movement are the materials for my art practice. So I often employ drama techniques found in improvised theatre, such as hot seating, forum theatre, a technique that came out of Brazil, role play, and somatic movement techniques, where movement language is discovered from within the body. And the work takes various forms, from films to video installations to live performance. And my latest piece took the form of a street procession. Today I'll be talking about my ongoing work around the estuary. I am of Hong Kong and English heritage, and since my childhood, I've felt that the estuary embodies me. It's part freshwater, part saltwater, part land, part mud. Its mixedness and hybridity reflects me well. So growing up othered in the UK, making homes in the margins, I relate to the liminal space of the estuary, a fluid, shape-shifting space. And so the estuary itself is a site of nurture, migration and renewal. And at the mouth of the river, it's a point of arrival and departure for humans and non-humans alike. It's a good nursery ground for migrating birds and fish that return every year to nurture their young. A busy, rich ecosystem that fosters multi-species movement and growth. So in 2016, I did a series of residencies along the Thames estuary, the big river that leads to London. My research involved approaching the estuary as a knowledge base. So asking what could be learned from this salty river, from its past, its present, and its future. And because of Britain's colonial past, the Thames estuary also holds histories of movement of cargo stolen from imperialized cultures and trade at the cost of millions of enslaved Africans and Asian indentured labor. It is a politicized water with violent histories. And some of the violence that runs through its waters today is that of diminishing species. The residencies culminated in me making a 20-minute film called Creature of the Estuary. So I'm going to play the opening 6 minutes now. You'll hear a voiceover, which is a verbatim text taken from interviews with people whose lives are entangled with the river. So I will share my screen now, and it is 6 minutes. Just one sec. Oops, sorry, it's the wrong clip.
Watching the tide creep in over the mud flats, still now as when I was a child, fills me with excitement. I can remember sitting at the head of Smallgains Creek, watching the tide cover the mud, and thinking, we can go anywhere now, anywhere you can get to by sea. We're connected. But it was equally exciting when the tide went out, and you were left stranded in the mud. You were completely safe. You couldn't get anywhere, and no one could get to you. I can well remember that night, and it will always stick in my mind for the rest of my life. It was a foul night, a real foul night. The wind was blowing, it was cold, and there was a full moon. This is the gateway, where the River Thames starts and stops. It's the official start to London, and we are the gatekeepers.
It was a far night, and we are the gatekeepers.
Anchovy, gurnard, eel, whiting, cod, bass, skate, smoothhound. The river used to be full of big eels. It was one of the fish the Thames was famous for, but they're becoming really scarce. In my early 20s, I'd go over to where the chimney is, there on the other side of the river, and fill a bucket of them. But now they've vanished. Young eels spawn in the Sargasso Sea. In springtime, they visit the shores of Europe. After 20 years living in the Thames, they start the journey back to spawn and die in the Sargasso Sea.
Thank you. Hopefully that played out okay for you guys. So in that project, I was really also exploring the story premise of a stranger comes to town, and how fear kind of plays out on the at the mouth of the estuary with the arrival of a stranger, and so exploring that through sort of like Gothic and horror, sort of like genre forms. And exploring the idea that we create our own monsters from fear. But today it's the big eels of the Thames estuary that I'm going to focus on. So as the bait digger in the film at the end of that clip says, that eels used to be really plentiful in the River Thames and across Europe actually. So hence the name that is given to them, the European eel, or anguilla anguilla in Italian. There's a long tradition of trapping and cooking eels in London. And there used to be loads of pie and mash shops selling eel pies and jellied eels right across London. And just near to Richmond, where some of our audience are today, there's Eel Pie Island, a small island in the upper reaches of the Thames, named after the eel pies it was famous for in the 1800s. During the medieval times, eels were used as currency to pay rent, at times payable at 75,000 eels per year. And it's only in recent times, since the 1980s, that there's been a rapid decline in eels in the Thames and right across Europe. So the European eel is now a critically endangered species. But the mystery around the demise of the eel adds to the mystery of their creation. And for hundreds of years, people have been trying to solve the question of how the eel reproduces without seemingly having any reproductive organs. The eel begins its life in the Sargasso Sea, a sea without land borders in the middle of the Atlantic. And much research has been done in the Sargasso Sea to find evidence of real eel reproduction, but the densely seaweeded ocean keeps its secrets close. The human quest for knowledge around the creation of the eel has its own rich mythology. The ancient Egyptians believed that eels were produced by the sun warming the Nile, and the Scots believed they began their lives as beetles. And in the English countryside, people believed that eels were born when hairs from horses' tails fell into the water. So this age-old human inquiry is sometimes referred to as the eel question. But the truth about eel reproduction, it emerged very slowly over time and sort of collective research. So careful observers noticed that what had long been taken for several different kinds of what had long been taken for several different kinds of animals was just in fact one creature. So the eel was a creature of metamorphosis as it transforms itself over the course of its life into 4 distinct beings. So it starts as a tiny larva with huge eyes that floats towards Europe in the open seas on the sea currents from the Sargasso Sea. And then it becomes a shimmering glass eel known as an elver, which is like just a few centimeters in length. And it makes its way along coasts and up rivers. And then a yellow-brown eel, the kind you might catch in ponds, which can move across dry land, and it can hibernate in mud almost until you've forgotten it was ever there. And then finally, it becomes the silver eel, a long, powerful mussel growing up to 1 meter in length that ripples its way back to sea. And when this last metamorphosis happens, the eel's stomach dissolves. It'll travel thousands of miles on its fat reserves alone, and its reproductive organs develop for the first time. So in the eels of Europe, no one could find those reproductive organs because they didn't yet exist. But even as these answers were arrived at, the eel question, as it was widely known, proved to be as changeable as the eel. It seemed to be forever unsolvable, for behind any eel answer, there was always another eel question, shrouded by many more layers of mystery. But now the European eel is on the verge of extinction. The eel question has become more pressing. There are many possible reasons for its disappearance, from disease to dams and locks, from fishing pressure to the warming climate, which is causing the ocean currents by which eels make their migrations to shift and change. But there are many other answers, and scientists are racing to find them. And this is a quote from Brooke Jarvis from an article they wrote in 2020, where some of the information I've taken from Brooke's article for this talk. And Brooke says, in our age of extinctions, every loss is like this: the disappearance not just of a creature from its ecosystem, but of all that we might learn about it, all that we invest in it, all its layers of meaning from our human future. To lose the eel is one grief. To lose the eel question is another. So the eel question itself is a method for learning about better ways of being together, human and more than human ways. I ask what wisdom is embodied in the way of the eel. How can we use our not knowing to collectively learn about what ecosystems eels thrive in? Citizen science projects have been happening over the past few years up and down the Thames to restore eel into the river. And this is a great example of the eel question in action today. And if we are to imagine other ways of being together, multi-species ways of being together, where ecosystems can thrive, questioning and not knowing is a good starting point. And in Lola Olufemi's book, Experiments in Imagining Otherwise, which was published just a couple of years ago, she writes, "The otherwise has a commitment to not knowing. Are you ready for that?" So I just wanted to finish off with a 2-minute clip from that film, Creature of the Estuary. So I'll just share my screen for one last time.
I just wanted to know if the
Some of the big winter storms changed the layout of the land. A marshy island once disappeared. Another time, a sandbank emerged overnight. A place not marked on a seafarer's chart can catch a sailor out. What goes on between the channels is constantly changing.
Thank you. Thank you. That's it.
Embodiment of the estuary and how you identify with it, I would like to introduce Krista Lundal and Marina Seattle, a visiting artist duo who've come for the Karachi Biennale. And they do very interesting, immersive performances where we actually became the body of the river. And I would like them to comment a little bit about the process that goes into their creative performance. Krista, would you like?
Yeah, I will be the voice for us today. I think Martina lost her voice today, unfortunately, speaking so much. Yeah, I connect a lot to the presentation that we just saw. I was thinking about river biographies also, because here we have, this is an artwork or a live session of 20 visitors that collectively are performing or forming a river. So, I don't know, the way how we look at it, I mean, we have a practice that stretched back 20 years working like this, and I think with this project we really finally came home, like our medium really found its right form. So there was something about in the last presentation about species disappearing. I'm thinking about this thing about that in nature, in the language of nature, you have a sense of that species is kind of like words, and that ecosystems are sentences. So if you lose something from that, it's such a big loss, much bigger than just. It's like the whole system is kind of like you're sort of like losing really something really important, more than we think maybe. And the focus with river biographies is really very simple. It's thinking about how can we reimagine ourselves as not being so bounded, thinking that we are here, our humanity starts and stop here with the surface of our skin, that we expand further than that. So in river biographies, you have 20 visitors. Half of the group are start as water, and half starts as stone or earth. And in the passage of the performance, they relate to each other, not as compartmentalized, that they are divided, but they really think like they complement each other somehow. And I think with this project, I think we are actually probably are thinking about how I mean, as artists, how can we do more than inform visitors of the exhibition about climate and environmental issues, but how can we also, like from an embodied perspective, actually change something directly, that you then, when they leave, they have a different perspective somehow.
Thank you so much, Krista. I think when I was doing the performance with you, I really did feel those boundaries dissolve as you intended. And also I had that realization that if I were really water, I would never lose my way. But as a human being with the goggles on, every step was an effort to find my way and not fall. So, it was a very interesting contrast, the experience. Thank you very much. Do we have our scientist in London? Atika?
Yes, we do. Yes.
Do we have Laura now?
Hi everyone, I'm Laura. Can you hear me? Okay.
Hi, Laura. And Laura, just before I let you tell us your work, I'd just like to tell our audiences that if they have questions, they can use the chat option and send questions in, and Atika can then share them, and then we'll open up the conversation as well in a few minutes. So, Laura, can you introduce yourself, please?
So hi. I am a project officer for an organisation called Thames Landscape Strategy, and we look at Surrey, Weybridge and Surrey to the sea, and the name reflects a document which is a 100-year vision to guide change along the river. So recently we had a project called Rewilding Arcadia, which looks at using nature-based solutions to help alleviate flood risk on the River Thames. We did an 18-month citizen science survey, which meant that we got lots of the community to come out and measure the water levels for a year and a half and look at what the river's doing, and essentially looking at the river on a floodplain scale and see what changes we'll need to make for the future to become more resilient. So from the results of that, we learnt that the water is not only coming over with the tide, it's also coming from underneath in the groundwater, which confirmed what we already thought. But it's very interesting to look at the way the water behaves and essentially work with water instead of against. So we work with our government organisation called the Environment Agency, and they look at the harder engineered solutions to combat flood risk, but we look at the more nature-based solutions. So working with the floodplain and reconnecting people to the floodplain, and using the floodplain to create climate resilience. So we plant lots of species that will be able to better tolerate the climate changes that we're going to face, just looking at the science and what does that tell us and how do we work with it instead of against it. So we get lots of community groups to come out and plant with us. We also have a technique called willow spiling, which prevents the banks from eroding of the River Thames, and it creates this natural barrier that essentially provides refuge for fish during high floods, so they can stay stay there and it prevents shock. So as Elin was saying, that the fact that we're in a freshwater tidal zone is really important. It's a really rare habitat, and that's because of development on these spaces. So having this habitat is really unique and really important. We also have wet woodland, tidally fed wet woodland, which is a habitat that is increasingly important. And so we're doing what we can to preserve and protect that. So one of the big issues we face here is rising sea levels, and the fact that in Richmond itself, it doesn't have these big flood walls. The flood defences are actually the contour lines in the hills. So it's meant to flood and it's meant to be wet, but obviously people live here now. And so, yeah, it's working with water instead of against it. So that's my role in looking at that landscape scale.
Thank you so much. We have a huge problem with rising sea level here in Karachi, and we are not really doing anything about it except relying on the blessings of a saint to keep us afloat.
Yes.
And, but we had a very interesting conversation with one of our artists, Nadeem Al-Karimi, who spoke about his elders. Nadeem is from Hunza in the steep mountains of the north of Pakistan. And he was talking of how the elders used to build roads and bridges, and how he differentiated between literacy and wisdom, because he said his elders had the wisdom to work with nature. And now more and more people of Hunza are literate, but they're losing the ways of being in harmony with nature and respecting, how to keep those old wisdoms alive. Because this is a wisdom conversation, and I think when we connect with the Guarani community and the elders of Hunza, and all of us bring the three rivers on one platform, we have so much to exchange. So I would like our audiences to maybe come in if anybody has questions to ask of any of our speakers. Yeah. And so please feel very free and welcome to bring in your questions, your queries. Anybody? Yes? Would you like to? Yeah? Please give your name. So, here.
Yeah. So I am the professor in engineering university, and in 2022, what we saw is heavy rainfall, flood, and it was quite a high rainfall. But in other part of the world, there could be 4 times more rain, and they have the proper drainage system. And the reason of the disaster of the 22 was that in natural water path, there were the obstacles, because of which the water could not reach to the LBOD, left bank outfall drainage. And that's why for 1.5 months or 2 months, the water was stagnated over there. Then this year, government, they are claiming that obstacles have been removed, and next time if there will be more rain, then there will not be that kind of disaster. And we are also waiting for a right bank outfall drainage system. And since Wahida is from Jamshoro, interior of Sindh, so do you think that what government is claiming is right? All obstacles and encroachments on the natural water path are already removed, so next time there will not be so much disaster like that?
Actually, I can't say this, as this is a very urban kind of question you are asking about. But as far as this Manchar Lake and the breakage of its the walls was really ruining all the cities in north of Sindh. So it was really kind of concern was raising by the villagers, and the city like Dadu, it was all drowned because of that. So I think government is now initiating and as they are saying, they are working on it, but it is very difficult in this kind of economic situations. And we are also, in some ways, I see we as communities, we as people, we are also responsible for such situations, because we are also taking part in such kind of practices which are bringing us to the disasters. So it is our responsibility too. And there are communities who have been really struggling to maintain their ecosystem, as we have seen around the world. So we have to also do that. Yeah.
Thank you. Seema? Seema
I'd
Khan
like
Khan?
to add a few things what you're saying, Khadija, and आपने जो raise किया. Issues. I've been on a think tank for water and food sustainability, studying the Indus structure, the water flow, the flows, the barrages, the dams, the estuaries, the riverines, and all that. So I want to correct you that after the Indus Water Treaty, we lost 3 rivers, 3 tributaries. The Chenab, the Sutlej, and the... No, Ravi is with us. But we... Beas. We lost these to India. And so हमारे पास रावी का कुछ पोर्शन आता है हमारे पास, and Chenab का कुछ portion आता है, but we've really lost those rivers after the Indus Water Treaty. As far as we're looking at the obstructions or the obstacles in the way of the water flow and what you're talking about, Manchar Lake is very badly hit by this. But the system, ever since the Sakhar barrage was formed, the amount of water coming down towards the delta was at one time a very thriving trade center. And there were villages around it, and everyone there was also a grower. But everything, because of the encroachment of the sea water rising and coming into the delta area, because of the pressure, low pressure from upstream. So that area was inundated, and a lot of migrations have taken place. People have stopped cultivation, and the situation is quite bad in the delta area. It's a dying delta. About this LBOD, the LBOD was constructed wrong. The LBOD should have been higher than the level of the sea, but it's not. And that has given a lot of problems to all the area around it. There have been over, I don't know how, number of people that have migrated out of that very fertile North Delta area, people who have migrated and are moving to Sakhar and other areas and taking on other jobs. Similarly, I won't take more of your time, but there's an urgent need for us to address the LBOD and the RBOD. RBOD is the saline water the drainage water coming into the RBOD, which has killed the RBOD, and LBOD, after the floods, the entire cultivable land around the LBOD has been destroyed.
So, yeah. So
I think we have a
So I would like to add
from
here.
Richmond.
I would like to add here a little bit of details, as I live in Jamshoro. So all the fertile land is being really turning into colonies, turning into constructions. So it is really like we are eating all the land which was really fertile. And as I have been really researching for this Biennale, so we went into the colonial past and looked at the history of how colonizer has just divided these rivers. And also the reason behind all this was the making of the dams. And all these has been the reason of this river, this Indus River not coming to Karachi, not coming into the delta. That's why the sea is raising and all these problems are coming. So that's why we also invited fisher folk communities to talk about it for the table project. And they are also raising some issues regarding environment, regarding ecosystem, regarding their struggles of thrown out of the city. So I think I would like to just hand it over to Nusrat.
Thank you so much. We have a question from Richmond. Can we take a question from Richmond, and then I'd like to come back to you and also share Kadir Jatial's project.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I've just been really obviously humbled by what we've seen and heard so far. So thank you, everyone, all the artists, for sharing all those stories. Actually, kind of that relates to what I was looking to say. The context for this relationship and conversation, one of the many contexts, is arts. And so I'm really interested to hear, as there's many artists around the table all around the world, in fact, kind of like the role of artists in this conversation. Because for us in Richmond, through our program, artists have led us to where we find ourselves today almost. And so I think it would be really fascinating to hear with what you've just said in Karachi, specifically with the experience over there where artists are perhaps leaders in this discussion space. But yeah, be really interested to hear your take on that.
Thank you, Andy. Kadir, do I have your permission to talk about your artwork? Would you like me to explain about the project? Because we're talking of flood waters, and on the other hand, we're talking of the diminishing of riverways. And Kadir Jatial is the fourth artist on this venue. His project is having brought a fisherman's boat to the NED campus and truckloads of sand from Sakhar, which is his hometown. And he has absolutely, we can see it in the image. So he has embellished the boat as a fisherman who would live on the boat for his livelihood, which is part of the risk name for our Biennale this year. So he's embellished it as a fisherman would who would be spending days on the boat. So they're cooking utensils. There's a very interesting sack, which is from Costa Rica, which just shows how objects make their way across continents, just as our conversation is also making its way across 3 different river cities. And what was very interesting about Kadir's project is that he has shown birds in his drawings, which are embedded in the sand. They are birds who have died because of lack of water. They are migratory birds, and you can see them in those frames. So it's about the missing or absent signifier in his work. And with all the embellishment and all the beautiful details that he's incorporated, what is missing in this work is the fisherman and water. So I think that's a very poignant work of art that we were privileged to see. Thank you for that, Kadir. Do we have any other questions? Would you like to?
Hi, everyone. So I'm an architect and also an artist practicing in Karachi. And my question is for Sadiqan. So what I really find interesting about your work is that when I usually think of waste and how rivers or like the landscape is being polluted, usually हम ऐसी चीजें देखते हैं that are really ugly. Okay, like the waste that is being created, that is going into our rivers, it's garbage. But the thing about your work is that you're talking about color and you're talking about dyes. And you also mentioned that it's beautiful, right? These colors spreading on the plaster in your work. And you also talked about like the word beauty. So I just wanted to ask, like, what do you think the beauty in your work, like, what do you think about it? Because it's a very like intriguing idea. Like in Faisalabad, the textile dyes that have these colors are like poisoning or like affecting the riverbeds. And like, yeah, that's my question.
सो अगर मैं इसका उर्दू में जवाब दे दूं तो फिर उसका तो बेसिकली मैं तो इस चीज़ में मेरे लिए कलर एक सेकेंडरी फिनोमेना है. मैं बहुत ज़्यादा इस चीज़ के अंदर इंटरेस्टेड था कि जो एक नाला एज अ ऑर्गेनिज्म किस तरह से बिल्ट हो रहा होता है वो गंदा पानी है.
So I'd like to translate as you speak, Sadhkan. So Sadhkan is saying that the color in his project was of secondary interest, and he was actually, his main interest lies in seeing how toxic material and other material seeps into the canal system.
तो बेसिकली मैं तो जो वाटर बॉडीज़ हैं शहर के अंदर जो डर्टी वाटर बॉडीज़ हैं वो किस तरह से एग्जिस्ट करती हैं और हम एज अ सोसाइटी उसके गिर्द किस तरह से रहते हैं और किस तरह से कंफर्टेबल होते हैं और वो किस तरह से हम पे इम्पैक्ट करती हैं और हम दिन ब दिन उनको किस तरह से बनाते हैं. मैं इस चीज़ में ज़्यादा इंटरेस्टेड था.
So he's interested in how these waterways or these canals which have contamination have people living on them, next to them, and they're quite comfortable, even though they know that this is pollution.
और वो बहुत सारी बीमारियां और बहुत सारी चीज़ें एक्सचेंज डेली बेसिस पे जो लोग उसके पास सोसाइटीज़ रहती हैं वहाँ पे रेंट कम होता है उन जगहों पे जहाँ पे नाले बहते हैं वहाँ पे दरख्त लगा के उनको कवर करने की कोशिश की जाती है लेकिन वहाँ पे कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड थोड़ी ज़्यादा होती है वहाँ पे कॉन्स्टेंट स्मेल होती है वहाँ पे डिके का प्रोसेस बहुत फास्ट होता है. तो ऐसी सारे फिनोमेना तो वहाँ पे एग्जिस्ट कर रहे होते हैं. तो मुद्दा ये हुआ कि जब मैंने रावी को देखा कि ये सारी वाटर बॉडीज़ इवेंचुअली रावी का हिस्सा बन रहा है. मैं अभी गूगल कर रहा था तो रावी इंडिया के पास चला गया ये 1960s के बाद हमारे पास नहीं है. सो अब जब इंडिया ने जितना पानी रावी में छोड़ना था तो वो उतना पानी ना होने की वजह से तो अगर आप रावी को भी एग्जामिन करेंगे तो रावी के भी दाएं और बाएं साइड पे जहाँ से लाहौर शहर है वो राइट साइड पे अगर मैं उसे कंसिडर करूँ तो वहाँ से काला पानी है और लेफ्ट साइड पे वहाँ पे थोड़ा सा साफ पानी चलता है क्योंकि ऊपर से अपर चनाब का पानी रावी में शामिल होता है वो लेफ्ट साइड की कनाल पे बहता है.
So Sadhkan has studied quite conscientiously the flows of the river, and he's also made a very important comment about how toxic waterways are available for poorer people to live next to, and the elites get to live in cleaner parts of the city. I think the Ravi River contamination has something in common with the Chiete River for the Guarani people that Rafael has talked about in his presentation. Kweita?
I would like to add a remark on your question, how Sadhkan has seen this sewerage system coming into the Ravi and how he's creating this beautiful installation. This is a kind of contrast which you were really asking about. So I think we are always looking at the industry that is giving us these colorful clothes and we are really attracted to it. So he's also attracted to those colors. But as I discussed with him, that all these colors, when they seep in on the plaster after a while, they turn into black. So that is how he's looking at this Ravi and the grayish thing that will be running into his installation at the end of the day. So he was looking at Ravi with that point of view. But this installation gives us a process that comes from the sewerage system to the Ravi, and then we also have this contaminated water. But it also represents a beautiful way of the textile industries, how they create these beautiful clothes.
मैं इसमें एक चीज़ ऐड करना चाहता हूँ कि जिस तरह अभी क्योंकि ये काम बहुत टाइम बेस है तो अभी जितने पानी भी जहाँ चल रहा है वो भी काला हो जाएगा और जो प्लास्टर के साथ पिगमेंट रिएक्ट कर रहा है इवेंचुअली आफ्टर 2 to 3 months इट विल बिकम ग्रेश. सो वो फ्रेशनेस उसकी डलनेस में क्योंकि आप नेचर दोनों नेचुरल मटेरियल हैं और बीच में एक वो आर्टिफिशियल मटेरियल है तो नेचर इवेंचुअली उसको डोमिनेट करती है और उसको डिके वाले प्रोसेस की तरफ लेके आना शुरू हो जाती है.
So I think in response to Andy's query about art, because really we are changing perceptions here through art, I think it's very important that these artists have made us experience things that are transforming and changing our own way of looking at the world and of looking at very specific problems in our different parts of the world. Atika, do we have any more questions from anywhere else?
Uh,
Question here, okay.
we have more questions here.
Can I ask
Where?
a question? Can I ask a question?
Yeah, of course.
So I basically want to know that the rivers all around the world are dying because of capitalism, imperialism, and real estate development, right? And my issue with artworks that get produced on this issue, I feel like we're not really directly dealing with or talking about or highlighting how capitalism essentially is killing the rivers, right? And I feel like there is I'm also an artist, and I do understand that we go for creative forms of expression while talking about these issues, but I do think that as critical thinkers and as people who have certain level of political consciousness, that why are we not directly talking about imperialism and capitalism and real estate development? And I feel like we just and it's been a few years, right? Like in the cultural industry, we've been talking about this. It's been a few years, right? Like I really do have an issue with this. I feel like we're just somehow trying to play safe, and I feel like we're just somehow, because like these big organizations, these corporations, right? And they are the ones who are killing the world and the rivers. So like why can we not be so confrontational in our art practices, and why can we not call these people out for?
See, artists have such expression, and they need to be, yeah. So there is activism going on, and as you have seen, there was an activism thing happened at Frere Hall day before yesterday, I think. So there are activists who are actively talking about it, and there is nothing happening. Actually, these activisms and these activists, they talk at 1 day or 2 days, but it's a long history of capitalism and imperialism, which can't be really eliminated from this world just like in a fraction of the second. So we can't, artists say it in their own way, poets say it in their own way, and activists say it in their own way. I think artists can't be that kind of activists. Some artists do, obviously, but some artists, it is their freedom of expression, how they really do it in their own way.
Thank you, Wahida. And I think sometimes the art that we see stays in our mind for much longer than something we may read in the newspaper one day. Yes. Can I just get Nadeem Al-Karimi, who's also one of our artists, to say something, and then I'll come to you.
First of all, I really appreciate your question. ये बहुत ही relevant and बहुत ही अच्छा question है. So basically मैं एक independent filmmaker हूँ और multidisciplinary artist हूँ. हुंजा से मेरा ताल्लुक़ है. तो हमारे मुल्क का ओके वो कर लेंगे मैं बाद में. So हमारे मुल्क का एक बहुत सबसे बड़ा एक कारोबारी बंदा है जो उसका मोनोपोली चलता है. उसने रिसेंटली हुंजा में एक ज़मीन रेंट पे लिया.
माइक को मुंह के पास रखते.
So अभी आ रही है आवाज़? हेलो, अभी आ रही है? ओके. So एक कारोबारी के बारे में बात कर रहा था. हुंजा में यूनाइटेड नेशन के रूल्स के हिसाब से ज़मीन नहीं खरीद सकते हैं. तो एक बहुत बड़ा कारोबारी ने 15 साल के लिए एक ज़मीन लीज पे लिया, एक होटल बनाया अतावात लेक के पास ही. तो वहाँ का जितना भी सीवरेज पानी था डायरेक्ट अतावात लेक में जा रहा था. ठीक है, उस पे मेरा जो अपकमिंग फिल्म है, प्रोजेक्ट है, उससे रिलेटेड है. साथ साथ फिर हम कोशिश करते हैं कि कोई प्रेशर ग्रुप हो और हम प्रेशराइज कर ले. बट वी कैन नॉट अफोर्ड रियली गुड सोलिसिटर्स या जो लॉयर्स होते हैं, ठीक है, उनसे फाइट करने के लिए. लेकिन फिर भी वन वे और अदर हम लोगों ने कोशिश किया कि वो एक हफ्ते के लिए बैन हो, वो सील हो होटल, और वो हमने किया. इस तरह के स्ट्रगल्स चलते हैं, लेकिन इसके लिए बहुत ज़्यादा रिसोर्सेज की ज़रूरत होते हैं. इट्स नॉट दैट ईजी. जिस तरह आप कह रहे हैं कि कैपिटलिज्म एक सोसाइटी के साथ खड़े, लेकिन हम अपने जज्बात को आउटलेट करने के लिए, अपने फीलिंग्स को आउटलेट करने के लिए एक सादगी इख्तियार करते हैं, जिस तरह ये आर्ट है. So I really appreciate your question, but it's really difficult.
Yes, because it takes a lot of resource to be able to fight big money. She's got the mic. Can you go ahead? Yes, go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to quickly add on to the conversation that was happening before passing the mic to Rutaba, which is a different question. But I think one of the things that really also struck me is that, like you're saying, right, everyone has a different way of engaging with the problem. And I think this is why a lot of cross-disciplinary work is really important, because if you have artists, engineers, activists, politicians in the same room, newspapers, journalists, then you have the real perspective shift happening and the translation and the communication happening. So just commenting on the need for interdisciplinary engagement.
Thank you. That's an excellent point. And I think in this Biennale, I can say that the work we have seen, art is activism. So it's aesthetics and activism happening at the same time, and risk. Sorry.
No, absolutely okay. I've been in the field of architecture, arts, and now arts-based research, and I'm a Biennale baby. So like it's been 5 years of my own practice, and now that through arts, now we're creating proof of concept for much of through mangroves work as well, through multiple areas for arts-based agency. What my really concern, like something that also Raphael also mentioned, like just shedding light on a river. I really want to explore and kind of understand, even from Wahida as well, that how does this is a room of privilege. It is a room of privilege, even for me, like me being in touch with the Biennale, me being connected to wonderful artists, even us being connected through our shared interest for the work as well, us even getting connected to someone from Climate March too. Like, it's such a privilege that you're driven by some concept, something drives you to this point. But how do you reach the masses? The one that is actually throwing the dye in the water, or the one that is actually contaminating the river on a daily basis? Because there are children that I was interacting with in mangroves, and they had no idea that they were living near the mangroves, or their father was doing the job of cutting the roots. So just the lack of awareness of the masses, like how does this art then reach and translate to the masses?
Yeah, I would like to answer this because we should have some art programming for the children all over these areas. Maybe some of us should go to some schools and talk to children and have this conversation largely. This conversation should largely go to the core and go to the people who are really growing in this environment, and we should just tell them what would be the future of their generation. So I think from this point, as we are making art, so artists can go and talk about their works with these children. Yeah.
I think there's a Richmond question.
Okay, Seema, if you can ask your question, and I'll go to Richmond after that.
Okay, no, I'm just saying that the fact that this risk subject and environment and water and climate has come up. What you said, it's not a privilege to be here, it's a necessity to be here. And media must play a role in this. Media creates the mass awareness. So media must take up, and media has done it. A lot of awareness concerning climate change has come through media. A lot of government action has also happened. A lot of activists have grown reading newspapers and understanding what is happening. And a lot of social media information is available on everything. And the threat of this climate change and stresses on water and, Pakistan becoming a water-stressed country is now quite people are aware of this. But when artists describe it through their expression and through some articulation, it only adds more impact to the subject and brings it forward.
Yeah, I think the media is a vital partner in bringing awareness. Question from Richmond, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to expand a little bit on our context, I guess. And obviously, we're sitting in London, the colonial power, if you will, kind of definitely in this conversation, and very aware that the last however many hundreds of years has got us where we are. In Richmond, the Thames runs through the centre of Richmond, but the borough sits on both sides. And back in 1902, because of artists, because of prominent UK artists depicting the view from Richmond Hill along the River Thames, Parliament passed a law protecting that view, protecting the ecosystems that run along that view. That didn't protect the water, and obviously the water in the River Thames, certainly through the 20th century, the river became dead essentially, and it's started to come back to life. So industry was still able to pump whatever they wanted to into the river. However, through artists and the ability of artists to capture that like intangible in this particular context, law was then passed to kind of protect this space. And so we're I guess interested in that as a vehicle for how artists can push for change, push for us to recognize what we do have and the beauty that we are part of, and should recognize that we're part of, but sometimes need that imagery created by a range of artists to kind of allow us to comprehend ourselves as part of this, certainly in the London context, in the Western context, where we have very much lost that relationship as part of the natural world. Thank you.
I think that's a great point about intangible and tangible heritages and how they have to work together. Do we have any more questions? And more to the point, do we have any time? Okay.
We are actually out of time. So
okay. Can we take one more comment
sure.
from
Absolutely.
Krista Lundal?
Yeah, yes, just a reflection. I think, so information I don't think is enough. I mean, the information it's like an overflow of information. What seems to be the problem is that it isn't really received. And I think the whole thing about coming out to people might be something like you have to really not have a streamlined message, but you have to really be embedded and embodied in the location where there is the problem. So there's, of course, this importance of lobbying for political change. But then in a long time, I think in the largest perspective, we are all sort of like having this kind of almost like a trauma of being under capitalism. Everyone is totally living a life that they don't really want to live. And we are sort of pushed to do that. And I think if you don't change that, it's not going to be any change, I think.
Do you want me to say my thanks? Yeah. So I think that brings us to the end of our session. Thank you very much, Rafael Vilela from Sao Paulo. Thank you, everybody in Richmond. And thank you, everyone in Karachi. Wahida Baloch, the curator of Risk, Atika Almas, our trustees for the Karachi Biennale, and everybody who's been here. It's been absolutely wonderful having all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
we have a message from Tim Coram, who's the head of the Richmond. He's like, dear friends, you can read the message on the screen.
Can you read it out?
It says, "Dear friends and colleagues, it has been fascinating exchange of ideas and imagery. Thank you to all artists and contributors for sharing such a rich and interesting program. Congratulations to the Karachi Biennale for curating and facilitating. Looking forward to working with you in the future." Likewise. Thank you, Tim. Bye, everyone.